Okay, hi. Welcome back to Bible Break, our 15 minutes a week in the Bible, see what it has to teach us, to see what God has to say to us through his word. Uh, we were just getting started last time around, and we're going to pick up the creation account at verse 20 this time. And as will be the case every time, reading from the New International Version. So Genesis chapter 1, verse 20. And God said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living and moving thing with which the water teems according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the water in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, excuse me, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it, they will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air, and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw that he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were in chapter 2. The heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. So, God makes animals, blesses them, tells them, as it were, to fill the earth, not just people, though, of course, when he makes man and woman, he tells them also to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. We are to subdue all that is wild life, and we are supposed to manage it for our own benefit, but always, of course, bearing in mind what it is that God has done. That's God who's made the animals. There are many injunctions in the Bible against cruelty to animals. God has made the animals just as God has made us and told us to manage. Rule is the word that's used. We are to subdue, but we are to manage the earth and its resources. That comes out in the next creation story as well, that we will see in chapter 2. I want to focus, though, on one or two of the more important points, I believe, in what we've just read. The first thing is, and it is repeated no less than 3 times. It is stated in verse 20. God said, "Let us make man in our image." And then in the following, 26, and then in the following verse 27, God created man in his own image. And as if that's not enough, it's now said twice. For a third time, in the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. No less than 3 times within the space of those 2 verses, we are told that God has made us in his image. In the 10 Commandments, which are very well known, the Israelites are told not to make or to worship any image of God. And that is because you cannot represent God. Anything that is put out there to represent God is always going to be much less than God, and far from leading us to God, towards God, is likely to lead us away from him. But I believe it's obvious enough that the other great reason that we are not to make or try to make any image or representation of God is not just because that demeans and belittles God, but because it demeans and it belittles us. Because we are God's workmanship. We are God's masterpiece. We have been made in the image of God. So that is why it is such folly for us to try to represent God in any such way, because we don't do God justice when we do so, and we don't actually do ourselves justice. What does this mean? Well, what this means is that we can only have our humanity. We can only enjoy our full humanity with all its possibilities, with all its potential, by appreciating who and what we are as distinct from the animals, and who and what God is. People have pondered, of course, what this means for us to have been created in the image of God, but I think I've just explained there what is actually the most important thing. That God creating us in his image must mean that at the very least he created us to be in some sense like him, or a reflection of who he is. And why would that be? Doesn't that go back to what I was sharing with you the last time around? That it must be that if God has created us in his image, it is so that he can and will relate to us, and he wants us to look and relate to him so that we can discover who and what we really are. Now, if that doesn't open up to you great vistas of hope and a great, what is this great adventure of life, then I really don't know what will. your possibilities, my possibilities, our possibilities are literally endless because God wants us to know him and relate to him. And anything less, you will just be selling yourself short. The next big thing I want to mention is that you've noticed as we've gone through these various stages of the creation, the days, that at the end of each one, we are told that God saw what he had made and he saw that it was good. And then when we get to the creation, the completion of the creation on the sixth day and the creation of animals and people, we see that the Bible tells us that God saw all he had made and it was very good. Just as I've said to you that we should not make any image or worship any idol because that diminishes us, let alone God. Of course, it diminishes God. Well, in the same way, I want to say to you that this business of us being created in the image of God is reflected in what we've read about God seeing his creation as being good, and then ultimately with the creation of animals and then of us at the pinnacle of his creation, God sees that as being very good. Guess what? Get this. The first worshipper was God. God was the first to look at everything that he had made, and I'm not being irreverent, but give himself a pat on the back because he was pleased with all that he had made. God is so pleased with what he does. And so God is satisfied. God savors. God appreciates the worth and the value of everything that he has done in self-worship, obviously, which is legitimate for God. And of course, naturally, we appreciate, we savor the creation, but we should not get stuck there, as so many do. We should be thinking about who made it. That if we appreciate what he has made so much, surely we should be thinking about what it means to appreciate and worship him. And God is so happy that he takes the day off at the end and he rests from all his work, which is complete, which is perfect. And he makes that day, the Sabbath day, holy, a day of rest, a day of reflection, a day of worship. Recreation, rest and recreation are part of the creation. I'm the last person to be in a position to have a go at anyone, but I would advise you to do what I sometimes do advise myself to do, which is to put everything down, stop working, have a rest, have a think, and enjoy. I hope that's been of use to you again this time, and we're going to carry on in chapter 2 next time around. Cheers.